Get around me.
Yep, I'm live. Okay, and we're live. So, hey guys, welcome to the Entrepreneurship Mindset Podcast, where hustle meets strategy. Today here we have Howard Freeman from Romy. How are you doing today, Howard?
I'm good, PJ, JP. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you as well.
So, can you give our listeners a quick introduction, plus who you are and what you're working on right now?
Yeah, sure. So I guess on the personal side, I'm a husband and father of 3 boys and grandfather of 2 little girls, and originally from New York City. But I also usually lead with the fact that I married a Texan, so that's why we live in Texas. So been in Dallas area actually for about a year and a half. Career-wise, I would call myself a career fundraiser, which I never grew up wanting to be a fundraiser. I wanted to play baseball for the New York Yankees. That career path ended early, like when I was in 8th grade. Or I wanted to be an astronomer. I didn't want to be a fundraiser. But long story short, I've spent about 30 years now in fundraising. Most of that time in nonprofit fundraising. Then 4 years ago, I got into venture capital, helped co-found a climate tech hardware company. Did that for about a year and a half. Then started helping other founders find early stage capital. Work with literally about a couple dozen early stage founders right after Silicon Valley Bank exploded. So not a good time to be a rookie fundraiser and venture. But worked also with 3 VCs, had the pleasure of helping them raise funds, and worked with a handful of nonprofits. And now I'm spinning up this fintech company called Romy. We could probably get into that a little bit. But
Yeah.
Great to be here.
So, let's rewind to your early days and where you got your entrepreneur spark. So, what was it like when you were a teenager or a young adult, and were you always an entrepreneur?
So I would say that I was always a creative person, but I didn't always find solutions to problems that needed fixing. So, for instance, when I was 10, I started a newsletter because I thought it was interesting. So I've always been kind of a writer ever since I was 6. So my first entrepreneurial venture, if you will, was a newsletter in 4th grade that I think my grandparents subscribed to, and that was it. And I did maybe 2 or 3 issues. But there was no one asking for this newsletter. No one was asking for this problem to be solved. I probably did a couple other things in high school or whatever. And then after college, I started, and I was maybe, mid-20s, started a newsletter again because that was my go-to is writing and publishing. So we're talking about, this would have been in 1993, 94, so maybe I was closer to 30. I started a newsletter for doctors in Atlanta who were also heads of their practice. I called it MD CEO, so MD/CEO. Seemed like a good title for a thing. I had 1 subscriber, again, because no one was looking for that kind of thing, but at least I was getting toward the, what problem is there that I could solve that people would pay for. I mean, that's the crux of it all. So I was getting more toward that. But I would say that, I've always been like the number 2, number 3 guy in a larger organization. So if the president or head of a group says we want to go here, I'd be the money guy to say, okay, we can take this path, or this path to find the money to get there. So I was never really the entrepreneur, but over the course of 30 years of fundraising, I've seen a couple problems over that time, one of which I know I can solve with this company, and people will pay for it, and people really need it. So that was, I would say that I'm kind of late to entrepreneurialism formally in terms of finding a problem that I can solve that people will pay for.
Right.
So when it comes to your first ever project that you felt like, oh, this could be something, was that this Romy project, or was that before?
I would say the first time that I really believed that either I could make a lot of money doing something or someone I was working with could was probably the company that we started in 2021. And the nature of that company was it's a climate tech hardware company, which doesn't tell you a lot. Basically, it's taking jet engines. This is not my idea. This is this other guy's idea that I grew up with. And he was a Hollywood stuntman and pyrotechnics expert. So he worked with like James Cameron and Tom Cruise and all these people. And so he would have to, for Hollywood films, like make fires happen out of nowhere or make it rain out of nowhere. He's a special effects guy too, and a stuntman. So he got the idea one time filming on a movie. It was a Tom Cruise movie, The Firm, and the director wanted him to move this burning pile of leaves quickly out of the set so that he could film another shot. So Steve Wolf, his name, he took a leaf blower and just blew the fire away out of the set, and it gave him the idea, hey, if I can blow this fire out of there, and he lived in Colorado, couldn't we put out forest fires by actually blowing fire out, like moving the fire?
Yeah.
So he came up with the idea of taking decommissioned jet engines, okay, like Learjet engines. Lear went out of business a couple of years ago. So taking Learjet engines, and he made, and this is patented, a misting chamber where he would take inside the engine a chamber where he'd put mist and surfactant to reduce fires. He'd mix it and then shoot it at high speeds at a fire. And he found that he could put out fires that way. So it can move a fire away from an area. It can create a fire break. It can clear brush. So basically, you put these jet engines that shot mist and surfactant toward a fire on the back of first a utility terrain vehicle, so a small UTV was the first prototype. And now they're building something that's much bigger, like on a big classic fire engine.
Nice.
So, that was and still is a real problem that people want to solve and will pay for, is wildfires. So that's really the first time I've been involved in something that was actually something that was causing a great deal of damage and lives lost, that people were willing to put a lot of money into.
So I know with entrepreneurship, we find a problem and solve it. So what is one of the biggest challenges or biggest problems you have seen with raising money for these nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, because when people think, and I mean every nonprofit has to raise money. You've got to raise, or at least your balance sheet has to be $1 in the positive at the end, right? Or you're in the red and you get dinged when you go to foundation grants or whatever. So you got to at least have a profit of $1. Okay, so it's not really a nonprofit. People like to say a for impact organization, but it really is a nonprofit.
Right.
So nonprofits, when they want to raise money, typically think about, doing a lot of activity toward getting a lot of small gifts. Like, if we need to raise $1,000, let's just ask 100 people to give us $10 each, right?
That's easy math.
That's easy math. It's also very hard work to go find 100 people to give you $10. It'd be easier to find one person to write a check for $1,000, right? But where do you find that person? So most nonprofits that need to raise money, in most sectors, depending on the sector, like an international aid organization is different than an animal welfare organization in the kinds of money they can get. But most nonprofits, because 75% of the charitable giving each year, which is about 500, it's actually just under 600 billion, 75% of that comes from individuals, just people like us.
Okay.
So it's scary to go to someone and ask for money, but that's literally like face to face. So it's literally, though, that's what people have to do, is they got to go find the people that have the money, that can write a $1,000 check, and go say, hey, JP, you have $1,000. We need $1,000. Could you write us a check for $1,000?
Sure, why not?
So that's, the scary part of fundraising, and actually asking people for money does create relationship, right? Like, you can say no, or you can say yes, but I'm still going to be your friend.
Right.
Right? And so to answer your question, the challenge is, where to find the money, and then how to get there, and then get over your fear of asking. But that's why we go to like social media and all these other things and foundation grants, and we do all this stuff, but it's hard to get that money, like through foundation grants. There's too much competition, it takes too long. There's a lot of soft costs to writing out foundation grant proposals and reporting. Instead of just me taking JP out to lunch, say, hey, glad to buy you this lunch, but can you write a $1,000 check for my animal welfare organization?
So over you said 20 or 30 years?
This is my 30th year.
Yeah, 30 years. How much have you raised? Because I see that you raised quite a bit, but would you like to tell our audience over your career how much you've raised?
It sounds impressive in a big number, which is $250 million. But if you amortize it over 30 years, it's not that big a deal. It really isn't. It looks great on a LinkedIn bio. Right. It's true, so I put it out there. But if you amortize $250 million over 30 years, it's not a lot of money. There are some amazing stories there, though. Like I oversaw the completion of a $54 million campaign, which was one of my favorite projects. That was early in my career. And we finished, it was a 6-year campaign for graduate school. And we finished the campaign with a week to go, and we were over budget by like $300,000 of $54 million. So tiny bit over budget, meaning over goal. We're over our goal by $300,000, and we were under budget. So we completed the campaign ahead of schedule, under budget, and over goal, which is where you want to be. And there were a lot of stories of these amazing people giving sacrificially, and it was a really fun project to be in. And I have to say the other really fun project raising money for, obviously, was the company that we started in 2021. That was my entry into venture. That was a lot of fun.
you seem like a very busy man wearing a lot of hats too. How do you manage? You know, you say you're a grandfather, you're a father, you're a husband, and you're a fundraiser going into venture capitalism, and just that's a lot to handle. You know, how do you do that? How do you balance out your schedule?
Yeah, well, fortunately, my wife, so we live full-time in Kerrville, and I'm up here in the Metroplex most of the time because I work here, and we've got an apartment in Fort Worth. But so she handles the home front, and so she does a lot of the hard work on the home side. And, you know, when you mentioned, you know, grandkids, so my oldest son has 2 girls, and so my wife will often, you know, fill in, you know, if she needs to take my daughter to the doctor or whatever, blah, 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 she does that. I don't know that, I don't know that I'm that busy. I do have a hard time focusing on one thing at one time, which I think, you know, PJ, back to your thing, you know, I think some entrepreneurs, well, a lot of, let me put it this way. I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, and some of the best entrepreneurs I've worked with are super ADD, but they're able to focus on this one thing, like hyper focus. And actually, to take it a step further, and speaking of my wife, who's also, you know, ADHD, but she's super hyper focused when she wants to be. A lot of the founders that I work with over the course of like 2022 to 2024 were female founders, and a lot of them were mothers, and, you know, with younger children. And they're, for whatever reason, I think certain moms are able to multitask and have to be almost ADD, but they can focus on their company when they need to be, and they get a lot of high quality work done in a short amount of time. You know,
Women are very gifted, especially with
Many
multitasking.
Yeah, multitasking. So how do I get it all done? Well, I have the benefit of having a wife back in Kerrville who does a lot of this stuff on the home front, and I'm here, and when I'm here in the Metroplex, which is really 2 weeks out of 3, I just work. You know?
And you're very hyper focused on the work that you need to be done.
Yeah, so I'm doing this company, but I also have a nonprofit client, an amazing client called International Literacy and Development, ILAD, that actually helps here in Dallas, in the Vickery Meadow neighborhood, helps legally resettle refugees and new immigrants start businesses. So and they work in 11 other countries doing similar things. So it's kind of a cool organization to work with as well.
So when you talk about that, and as I understand it, you did invite me out to an event in October.
Yeah,
but
you're coming, right?
I am coming.
Yeah.
I'm coming in October 4th.
Yeah.
Forgot the time, but I'm coming.
6:30. I'll remind you.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Now, my question to you is, as I saw, that is a pretty large event, to an extent.
Yeah, it's their big event each year. It's about 150 people at that dinner.
Okay. So when it comes to those like large scale events, I assume you've worked, in the back of house side of things. So what are like some things that people don't see when you set up a scale of a nonprofit event that large?
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember one of my mentors years ago, when I worked for the same graduate school that did the $54 million campaign. He said that if you're planning an event, which I hate doing events, and again, women are often better at doing those events because they just put a certain touch on it and they know details. Guys just like, is there food, is there beer? Okay, good, event, happen. He said to me, and by the way, special event fundraising is very inefficient. This nonprofit's a little different. They don't spend a lot of money, but most nonprofits will spend 30 cents on the dollar to raise $1 at a special event. That's an inefficient way of fundraising. Back on major donors, it's the cheapest way of fundraising. Or actually, the cheapest way is if someone dies and they left your organization in their will, right? So that's another story we can do another time.
Sure.
But for special events, my boss at the time, this is 20 years ago, said, Howard, to the extent that you're miserable setting up this event and doing it, everyone else will have a good time. So you sweat all the details, and no one else will see what you see. So you're talking about back of the house, PJ. It's like, number one, like to do a good event, I think, like a big event, you want to have a lot of people who are competent doing different things. So, someone is in charge of volunteers at the event. Someone is in charge of how the tables look. Someone in charge of entertainment. So you kind of break up the main tasks. And I think the best, while I hate doing events, we did a really successful retirement dinner for the president of this graduate school. It was back in 2006 or something like that. And we had about 400 people, including all the board and everything. And I had maybe 10 people on this committee doing the event. So all I would do was had weekly meetings, checking in on everyone, who's doing what, are you doing this, where are you in this, and so forth. And I'm not really a gifted manager, although it was a management task. but I had really good people doing everything. So as long as I kept everything moving, the night of, and we had someone running at the night of, which you really want to have, like kind of production or director, if you will, then your task is pretty easy. Just hire or put in charge really good people in their task and their domain expertise and let them do their thing and just make sure everything's moving forward.
So now that you've mentioned that, hire the best people and get things moving on that side of things, that's the nonprofit side. But how would you switch that over to the for-profit side for your company, Romy?
In terms of doing events or hiring people or what?
Both.
Both. That's not only a really good question, it's also something I have to face pretty soon in terms of hiring people or bringing someone on. In terms of hiring people in general, because I don't have a lot of skills that I think I'm really good at. Hiring people I think is one of my real skills, because for whatever reason, and I learned this again from someone else. So a lot of the stuff that I know I just learned from other people, where when you interview someone and you ask them a question, hey, if this and such happened, what would you do? Well, it's a hypothetical, right? And they're going to answer what they've told themselves to answer. It's better to say, hey, PJ, tell me what your values are. Like, what do you believe in? What are your values? Like your work values, whatever. Okay, and then you tell me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You go, okay, PJ, tell me how in the last 2 weeks, how did you live out those values? And you want to look at track record, and you want to look at what they've done. And I'm willing to hire someone who doesn't know necessarily what the task is at hand here, but has had a track record of kind of figuring it out. And that again goes back to entrepreneurs. Like the ones that I've worked with, I feel very fortunate. The ones that I've worked with that are rock star founders have figured out their life along the way. Like you and I both know one who's got a cleaning company, a young woman, 27. And if you listen to her life story since she was 15, she's figured out all these challenges on her life. And so I bet on her. And there are companies now that invest in people, not companies. Yeah. And that's more and more the thing. In fact, there's a company here in Dallas, Preston Trout.
Preston Trout.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good bet, is to bet on the people, not the company.
So you've learned some of these skill sets through experience. What about any books that you have read? Because something that I'm hearing in reference to you being able to interview someone and hear their skill sets. There's a book that comes to my mind, Strength Finder 2.0 by Tom Rath. And it talks about identifying individuals' top 5 strengths. And based on those top 5 strengths, you see what positions that need to be filled, and you can just delegate that task to them in their gift or area in their gift. But anyways, I don't know. Have you ever read that book yet, or no?
I haven't read that one. I know.
Or have you heard? Oh, so you heard of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I took that test a while ago. I've taken those, the Myers-Briggs, the Strength Finders, the DISC. I think is similar. All those things. Yeah. I try to triangulate among them, like what I need to know about myself or how to help an employer or client or whatnot. I tend to, in terms of books that I've read that are influential or that I apply.
The main problem failing nonprofits have is not that their missions are weak. Many of the best nonprofits are struggling to make budget because they lack the tools to find aligned capital. Staff are overworked and told that overhead is bad when the private sector spends freely on it. Donors are wondering about accountability and transparency when most nonprofits don't have the resources for outcomes measurement that holds up under due diligence. And worst, a growing percentage of charitable dollars sits in a digital parking lot. Americans give over $557 billion each year, and that figure is growing. Yet more than $229 billion is parked in donor-advised funds, while frontline nonprofits gasp for oxygen. That's a nearly $1 trillion inefficiency hiding in plain sight. Sometimes it's because people with money and a heart to give can't find the people doing the work. Sometimes it's because the bankers managing those donors' money conveniently forget to nudge them toward generosity. That's what Romy is built to fix. Trained on decades of philanthropic and venture data, Romy identifies donors with both capacity and intent in real time as they visit your nonprofit's website, then pushes that intel to your CRM and alerts your staff to follow up. Are you a lean team needing to beef up development without taking dollars from your programs? No sweat. Romy's tiered pricing is sweet and won't take a bite out of your budget. Romy is the world's first agentic truffle hound, named after the Legato Romagnolo breed, and designed to find donors for nonprofits and top performing nonprofits for independent and family foundations.
Oh,
Yeah, we were close. So let me pick it up. So we'll do like another 15, and then we'll like close it out in the last 5. And we still have audio, so we're good. So I'm actually gonna stop this audio. Okay, so let's see. So when it comes to your mentorship, I saw on your LinkedIn that you mentored tech startups through Tech United.
Through Techstars?
Techstars,
Yeah.
I think it might have been.
Yeah.
What was that, the most common mistake you saw them make?
So my role with Techstars, which I really like, the folks, I work with 2 different accelerators, Techstars Anywhere, which is kind of founders dispersed all over the place, and then Techstars Physical Health Fort Worth, so that was based in Fort Worth. They've wrapped up their work since, but Trey Bowles managed both of them. Trey's great. So my experience was a very positive one. My role was very limited to, a few times each with some of these founders on the fundraising side. I think many of them knew what they're doing and they just wanted to get advice here and there. I'd often have investors that I could introduce them to and so forth. 1 or 2 of them might have thought they knew more than they actually did. And I remember one of them was a little bit older than most of the others. And I think one of the danger of being older is that you think you know stuff that you don't know. And you might be a domain expert over here, but you think you're a domain expert across domains you're not. And so it's hard for older people, I think, sometimes to stay humble. And it's hard for younger people to know what humility is. So, I think those are some of the things that happen. But like I said earlier, a lot of the founders that I work with outside Techstars, and a couple within, some of the women in particular, and it's not like I'm just trying to champion women founders, but I think because a lot of them were women, a few of those were new immigrants, and a few of those were like mothers, and they had so much stuff going on they had to do. A couple of them they couldn't afford to fail. They had to succeed. So it's kind of like that. They're not going to quit until they succeed. That's what made them really gritty founders. And those are the kind of people I like working with.
So when it comes to, you've been both tech and nonprofit, are the mindsets the same or are they different?
So I'm going to answer that. I'm going to try to exclude my current client in case they listen to this, because I think there are a lot of positives for this one nonprofit client that I'm working with that are exceptional and make them a little different from others. But generally, I think that nonprofit workers tolerate mediocrity a lot more than the private sector by far. Like, in my opinion, and this is where I get a little bit on a high horse, I think a lot of nonprofits should be allowed to fail by their donors and boards. Like, they should go away because they're underperforming and they're poorly managed, they're in the red. So nonprofits tolerate mediocrity or poor performance a lot more than they should. And then there's some obviously high-performing nonprofits. But the difference is that in the private sector, it's market-driven, and the market will say who succeeds and who doesn't, right? You can't force someone to buy your product or service. People have to choose it, and they have to choose it again and again and again, which is the great challenge for the person running the business to say, hey, I've got to make this valuable for that customer time and time again and beat the competition. Nonprofits don't hold themselves to that same standard, and that's why I think a lot of nonprofits should just go away or be acquired, which should happen more in that ecosystem, but isn't.
So, we've been talking a lot about the nonprofit side and, tech combined, and, you run a startup called Romy. Am I correct?
Romy. Yeah,
Romy.
Close
Okay,
enough.
cool. Sorry. So what is Romy?
Yeah. So Romy is named after, you guys dog people, cat people, ferret people, parrot?
I
You
was
got a
raised on dogs.
Yeah, so there's a breed of dog called the Legato Romagnolo breed. It's an Italian dog breed. They hunt truffles, the things you find in like French fries in high-end places.
Right.
Yeah, truffles. So there are pigs that hunt truffles because you got to find them in like forests and stuff. They're fungus near trees, and they're dogs that hunt truffles. This dog breed, the Legato Romagnolo, is a dog breed that was bred to find truffles. So as a fundraiser, I've often thought of myself as like a truffle hound. Like my only job, is to find the good stuff for the client or the nonprofit. So I woke up one day in this nap, literally, like my wife tells a story. I woke up from this nap in late April. I was like, oh man, I wonder if there's like an AI agent. And I just started like I was still half sleeping, I kind of put together this idea of this truffle hound, and I found a photo of a Legato Romagnolo dog, and I made Grok or ChatGPT turn it blue, just because blue is a nice color and looked nice in an icon. So typical me, I put the cart before the horse. I made the icon and the branding before I figured out what it was going to do. But Romy is named after the Legato Romagnolo dog, and it's an AI truffle hound that finds major donors for small to mid-sized nonprofits, because of the 1.5 million operating nonprofits, 1.2 million of them, 80%, make less than $500,000 revenue each year. Some of them are good nonprofits, but they can't find major donors. They don't know how to do it. So this tool will do that for a fraction of the price of the high-priced tools that expensive, bigger nonprofits can pay.
So what's the average price between your competitor to how much you've made it?
So my pricing now is just theoretical. We actually
Right.
we're not commercialized yet. But the cheapest solutions out there for donor research and wealth screening is $5,000 a year. The three big competitors are Wealth Engine, Donor Search, and iWave, and two of them are owned by big public companies. And then there's another one, Razor's Edge. Actually, that's owned by Blackbaud, which is a public company. So the solutions that are out there are $5,000 and up as much as $22,000 a year. So my solution would start, there'd be a basic tier, but it's $9 a month, $49 a month, and then there's an enterprise version. So even at the enterprise level, it's going to beat the competition with, hopefully, we expect the same level of research delivered on the user end.
So, what's one question you ask founders before, offering any advice that you have?
If I'm getting to know them, I'll a lot of times I'll ask them for their part of their life story, like it'll be conversation, and through that, I'm going back to the woman that we both know as this cleaning company. I'll learn about their life, and I'll learn about the challenges they've overcome, in whatever parts of life. That'll usually tell me, how viable their business is, because I'll know whether or not they're willing to overcome whatever challenges crop up in their business, and then that'll indicate whether I want to work with them.
So, we're heading into the, what I like to call the rapid fire round. I'm going to just ask you 3 questions, and then you just answer them.
Try to be as
Back to
succinct
back
as
to back.
possible, not blabber on like I do.
I won't. Don't worry. What is one book every entrepreneur should read? What is your favorite failure that led to a better outcome? And what's your most underrated skill in your business? Or, most underrated skill in business.
Okay, so book every entrepreneur should read.
Yep.
I think that everyone should read Good to Great.
By Jim Collins.
Yeah, by Jim Collins.
Jim
Everyone should
Collins.
read it.
Hey, everyone write that down.
Yeah, Jim Collins, great book. I still remember I read it, 20 years ago, whenever it came out. The second one was what?
What is your favorite failure that led to a better outcome?
Personal failure, business failure, anything?
Don't matter.
High school wrestling, I lost to Adam Ross-Deitcher in junior year. He stalled the last period. I think he won on a technicality. It was total fluke, or what? Not a fluke. It was a crock. Next year, I beat him in the finals of our tournament, our Ivy League school tournament. It was high school, and I beat him in the final 15 seconds, and it was a wonderful retribution against Adam Ross-Deitcher at Riverdale School. He became a friend. I beat him.
So, the last question before we head into, whatever. What is your most underrated skill in business? What do you think is the most underrated skill?
Underrated or important but under noticed?
Important but under noticed.
Asking questions. Because number one, you find out what you need to find out, and also when you ask a question, you're in control of the conversation, right? You can pace the conversation you want to. If I ask you such and such, like if I ask you, I don't know how long you've been podcasting, you've got to think about the answer. I'm in control of how that goes, and it allows also other people to talk about themselves, not in a vain way, but it develops trust. I think asking questions and asking the right questions is the most underrated skill in my work that people can have.
What's next for you in 2025?
So we want to commercialize by September 1st, and we want to close our first enterprise client by September 30, and we want to have 10,000 in MRR by December 31st. That's what I'm hyper-focused on.
Those are some very good goals.
Yeah.
So, now, we're, about to close it out. So, starting with, where can people connect with you and follow your work?
So I think you've got my LinkedIn QR code somewhere. People are always willing to connect with me, or I should say I'm always willing to have people connect with me on LinkedIn. I love helping people when I can. The website is getromy.app, so getromy.app. If you're a nonprofit, a small nonprofit, and want to get on the waiting list, you can sign up there. Then I'm on Instagram, I think, and other stuff. But mainly I live my life on LinkedIn, and if you want to give out my email, you can as well.
So, any final advice you have for young entrepreneurs listening to this right now?
I think the best advice is more of like an encouragement that you young entrepreneurs have your life ahead of you, and focus on finding a problem that you think you could find a solution for that people will pay for. It's that simple and that hard.
Very interesting. So guys, this is Howard Freeman. Next week we have Samir Ranjan, Chief of Staff of something. I don't know. I don't remember. But I'll get to you guys next week. But he's upcoming. If you guys want to keep out for him, he's coming. But let's say thank you to Howard. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, PJ. Thank you, JP.
Well, it was nice meeting you, Howard. We
Likewise.
will see if we can get you on a second episode at some point.
Great. Love to.
Yep.
Thanks.